This is the War Room with PMAC, presented by Chiefs Focus. On this show, PMAC and you provide you front office insight into crafting a championship caliber team for the Chiefs. They are identifying the right pieces to possibly meld together to lead to success this upcoming season.
Welcome, Chiefs Kingdom, to another episode of the War Room with PMAC, presented by Chiefs Focus. This time, I'm not joined by Thiz, my co-host and my producer. Thiz, the letter, not the word, you. But he's currently on the road trying to get back into town because, unfortunately, he had a loss in the family. And we send our condolences to him and his wife and everybody in his family and friends. And with that being said, there's somebody that you guys are familiar with here in Chiefs Kingdom that's going to be in this spot today. And that is none other than one of my favorite personalities in all of Chiefs Kingdom media, especially what he talks about on Twitter and the stuff he speaks about what the team needs sounds just like what I talk about. And what's so crazy, he has a name just similar to mine. I call myself PMAC. He calls himself DMAC, none other than DMAC Wakefield from Kingdom Kast. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm doing great, PMAC. I thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate the compliment of enjoying the way we see football the same way, man. And always good to talk with you. So happy that I could come on the pod and talk some Chiefs football, man.
Yeah, man. You had to be one of my first, like you're my first big celebrity guest here on my show. My first guest was my guy, Brad, because Brad's a very knowledgeable guy. You know, he loves Chiefs football, Iowa, Hawkeye sports, and, Royals baseball. So, but anyway, though, man, just welcome to the show, man. I'm glad that you're here, man. And guys, as you guys know, and DMAC, we all know, we're about less than 4 weeks or almost 3 weeks away from the NFL draft coming April 24th to the 26th. Recent moves that have happened last week have made it easier for the Chiefs to decide what they're going to do heading into the draft. So with that being said, good sir, let's dive into one of my favorite sections of news I like to call That's News to Me.
That's news to me. That's news to me.
That's news to me.
All right, and the first bit of news we're going to talk about is the return of CO Charles Omenihu rejoining the Chiefs on a one-year contract. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, defensive end Charles Omenihu is returning to the Chiefs on a one-year deal worth $7 million. Omenihu is 27, was drafted by the Texans in the 5th round, as you guys know, in the 2019 draft. Played for the Niners before signing that 2-year deal with the Chiefs worth up to $20 million. As we all remember. After missing the first 6 games of the 2023 season due to an NFL suspension for violating the league's personal conduct policy, he returned in mid-October, recording 31 tackles, 8 sacks, 3 forced fumbles over 14 games. However, suffered a torn ACL in the AFC Championship game against the Ravens about 2 seasons ago. So Omenihu missed 17 games over 2 seasons with the Chiefs and will now play on a prove-it deal, hoping to complete an entire season and restore his market value. So what's your thoughts about that, OG?
Look, I'm extremely excited about it. I identified Charles Omenihu as the number one guy as far as the defense that they had to bring back, and I did it for this specific reason. I thought his price range was going to be within reason, for the simple fact of obviously he has missed games either through suspension or injury than the last 2 years. But secondarily, I do believe that he is the second best pure pass rusher on this team. And George Karlaftis has played edge at a really high level. He's come in and being a really solid guy, and he's really good at cleaning up those sacks. But when you're talking about being a disruptive force next to Chris Jones, Charles Omenihu does that at a level that nobody else, in my opinion, brings right now to the defensive line, especially when you consider, obviously, moving on from Tershawn Wharton, given that he got a market that was pretty high. But shout out to him for all the work that he put in to be there. I felt like Charles Omenihu was a key piece to bring back. He came into the offseason feeling like he was going to have a more robust market, it appears, than he ended up materializing as far as free agency was concerned. And ultimately, as time went on, he, got a little bit of a realistic view of things and decided to take another one of those, 1-year prover deals, which for me, I'm happy about. And really the most underrated aspect of this is the ability Omenihu brings, of versatility, which Spags really, really loves and relies upon, but the ability really to make game-changing plays because of his ability to strip the ball. And that's something that you saw immediately when he came over here. And he really, considers a calling card of sorts too. So I love that he's coming back, and definitely for the value that Veach got him for, I'm extremely happy about it.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask, were you on that live with Nate Taylor, Seth, and Briscoe when they were talking about Omenihu's agent and how that might have been? I felt like I might have, when I heard that, I was like, man, it makes all the sense in the world because, this is the same guy who was Earl Thomas's agent, and Earl was just a step away from signing that 1-year deal before that same guy just like, hey, bro, 3 years, $55 million, Baltimore. But, it all worked out. And, these things happen. It's business in the NFL. And like you said, man, I'm happy you said the same thing about Omenihu. I felt the same way, man. And, I always keep these scenarios in my head. Like, I'm doing like 5 different things at once. And part of that scenario is like, you got to keep plan A, plan B, and plan C just in case if that don't happen. Plan A was to bring back Omenihu. Plan B for me was like, Von Miller and guys like that, especially Von because he loves Derek Thomas and all that. But anyway, bringing Omenihu back was smart, bro, especially since we hope to have him for the entire season, healthy, and just that strong bull rushing, man. And just to reinforce the defensive line, after you said, Turk, shout out to him, man. Do your thing in Carolina. And to Derek Nottie, do your thing in New York with the Jets as they departed in free agency. This is a big deal for us, and especially to get him for $7 million, because most of us thought that I thought he was going to get like between $8 to $10 million, but $7 million, I'm with that. And this is what I think now: if he plays at least the 400 to 600 snaps, he could get at least 4 to 6 sacks, and kind of replicate what Wharton did last season going into this year. And like what Diz just said there, Carl Loftus definitely needs Omenihu. And it's not just Omenihu. You just need to ask some more help as well, bro. And that's why looking ahead to like this draft and also look ahead in 2026, because you got to look at it like this. There's only one defensive tackle that's going to be on contract in 2026, and that's Chris. And he's not any younger either. So you got to start planning ahead for the future, especially adding that value. So, adding a speed rusher, a versatile guy just like Chris, Derek Harmon, who's a Chris Jones clone, in my opinion, and an athletic nose tackle. And, defensive tackle to me is still a concern. Well, you brought back Pinnell, but just adding another one, especially in terms of depth and a little more power, will help. That's my opinion. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Look, as far as Charles Omenihu is concerned, I do think that it was a little bit of a down year from the standpoint of he was coming back from that injury. And generally speaking, when you're talking about ACL injuries, you try and get back as quickly as possible, but you can feel a full year really of game action before you really feel like yourself. And I think that some of that did affect him, especially down the stretch as far as that's concerned. So I think that now, a full year removed from that, we're going to get the best version of Charles Omenihu. And so you mentioned obviously only weird games with Nate, Seth, and Briscoe, and they do a great job. But I had tweeted out that I thought that Omenihu was going to get a double-digit, sack season, or had a really good chance at it. Then Briscoe said the same exact thing, and I was like, you know what? I just got to take this step further and say that I think that he can, and he's going to get a double-digit sack season because of the positions that we're going to put him in next to Chris Jones. I love what we've done with the DB room, which we can get into a little bit later on as well. And I think that this defense has a chance to be better than it was a year ago. And really, if you have Omenihu for a full season, I think that he has the ability really to get into that 10 sack range ultimately. But regardless, I think his impact is going to be well worth it and really return the value of that contract tenfold.
Absolutely, man. 100% agree with you, my guy. And speaking of DBs, as you said, good sir, there was another signing of a DB for us, and it's none other than former Packers cornerback Robert Rochelle to a 1-year deal. Former 4th-round pick with the Rams in 2021, won the Super Bowl when they beat the Bengals, Cincinnati, as I call them. That's right. But, bounced around between the Seahawks, Panthers, practice squads before joining the Packers, and was a beast on special teams, played 11 games and had 2 tackles and a fumble recovery. And at first I thought this signing might be reminiscent of, the Kelvin Joseph signing from last year. But if he plays his cards right, especially with special teams, to work his way up in competition with the other corners we got, even though you got McDuffie and Fulton, because you already know what that's going to be competition after those guys, he could resemble Terrence Mitchell when he first came in 2016. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think Rochelle offers, better upside than Mitchell. He's faster, he's stronger, more explosive than Mitchell. I look at those measurables like in the draft and stuff like that, scientific stuff. And while he played only one defensive snap in the past 2 years, he contributed significantly, like I said, on special teams, like 121 snaps last year. So his success will hinge on the trust of Uncle Dave.
Yes, it will. And Dave obviously does a great job. DBs on 3, Mr. Dave Merritt himself, with developing defensive backs. So again, when you're talking about a guy coming out of the draft, which you talk about a day 3 defensive back, he really fits kind of the mold that the Chiefs like to gamble on. He's got longer arms. Even though he's only 5'11", he's a little bit more in that Brashad Breeland kind of build of where he's, 195 plus, really strong, plays that way. Physical, willing to go ahead and tackle, of course. And then you talk about those kind of raw numbers as far as his actual ability with explosiveness, speed, all off the charts. His RES was over 9.6 as far as his draft combine was concerned. So you see the DB ingredients that the Chiefs like to bet on. And I think this is another example of that. He's bounced around from the Rams to the Packers at this point. I think at the very least, he's one of those guys where back end of the roster, if he shows well on special teams as they go through this, and he's going to be competing with the guys like Chris Roland Wallace, Nick Jones of the world, et cetera, as you go into special teams to see if he can stick, and then continue to get that work with Dave Merritt and see if you can develop a little bit more to get out of him. What I thought of as far as his actual build, reminds me a little bit of Brashad Breeland. Now, Breeland was a better corner and actually more proven corner when he eventually came to the Chiefs, of course, and helped us win a championship.
Breezy.
He is actually in that kind of mold from that standpoint. So I want to see, when we get out there to St. Joe's, see how he works and see if he can, flash a little bit and show himself. And again, when you talk about the back end of this cornerback room, there are some opportunities maybe to get on there as far as special teams is concerned. And so we'll see how he shows. And he played that role well for the Packers. So we'll see what he ends up bringing to the team.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And there's one thing I wanted to mention about my guy, Roland Wallace, man. I love that guy. If you look at his measurables, well, he might be the slowest corner, but he's the strongest. Like, he's a bully in press man coverage. He kind of reminds me of Josh Norman. And I feel like if the Chiefs give him a chance, even despite the speed, he's a technician more than an athlete. If you give him a chance, I feel like they might rethink about even getting a corner. And I think this speaks to, like, this thing here, too. So, Williams and Watson, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, they've been listed now because, these moves have been made by Spot Track. I think Spot Track listed Williams as a cut candidate. Then PFF, Pro Football Focus, for those who don't know, listed Watson as a trade candidate. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's kind of one of those things where as you get to the draft, I think that you sit here, you feel confident in the fact what McDuffie is. That Christian Fulton's coming over here on a deal that is, I wouldn't say significant, but hefty enough that you would say that you feel confident in what he can bring to the table of being a true cornerback 2, if not, cornerback 2/3. I thought Watson started off the year so well, and then the injury, I don't think he necessarily got himself all the way back to where he was compared to where he had started off the year 2. However, I don't necessarily see the logic in the Joshua Williams cut. I think that they're going to continue to get the value out of him from that standpoint. I think he's safe as far as roster. I think you take him from being a cornerback 3 that occasionally has to get on the field to a cornerback 4 that is really good depth. I think that's a really good spot for him to land in. And similar to where we saw this defense be elite as far as 2022 was concerned, or 2023 was concerned. So I like that from that standpoint. Watson is an interesting case. I think Watson is something where it comes down to the draft. If they love a guy, I don't think it's going to be at 31. I think it's more of a 63 thing.
Absolutely.
If they love a guy and it's a Trey Amos or a Siobhan Ravel falls to them at that spot and they decide, hey, we need to go get this guy, and they think he can be cornerback 3 immediately, which I think would be a fair assessment, then I understand where they would look and say, hey, if somebody wants to come and give us more value than we necessarily would like to get out of a guy on expiring contract for Jalen Watson, then I think, yes, they would entertain that. Does it happen? Who knows from that standpoint? If you ask people, it's a weaker cornerback class, it's a better cornerback class, depends on who you ask. So from that perspective, I can see it if the team comes calling for it. We just have to see it. But as we move into the draft, no, I don't want to move either one of those guys because I like where they're at on the depth chart.
Yes.
Like where the entirety of the cornerback room is. And Chris Roland Wallace, to me, is their backup nickel because of what he kind of brings to the table, that physicality, good technical ability, good movement skills, just doesn't have that long speed. But that's fine. That's exactly what you kind of look for as far as the nickel is concerned. So I like him as a backup to Trent McDuffie being your primary nickel, having Fulton and Watson outside, and then you go into the draft and see what happens with Williams with good depth.
Absolutely. And there's one more name you forgot. Darian Porter from Iowa State.
I do like Darian Porter.
Dude, Tariq Woolen written all over him, because you got to remember this too. I'm going to just finish this before we move to the last new segment and then to the next segment. There's a reason why the Chiefs didn't draft Woolen and McDuffie the same year. They opted for Josh and Watson because they saw it. They were like, you know what? We would have 2 all-pro corners, but we have to pay either one. So that made a lot of sense to me. And same thing with George Pickens. And now you see the thing with George Pickens, got the talent, but ain't worth all the headache, So,
yeah.
So,
and I think that Porter certainly in that mold. And the thing I like about Porter and Ravel, really, from this specific standpoint, Amos is more of the just really great technique guy that I'm sure Merritt would like to work with. But Porter and Ravel, really their ball skills are exceptional. And Porter is a little bit different from Ravel from the standpoint of Porter started out as a wide receiver at Iowa State, kind of bounced back and forth. Obviously, he's 6 years, so he's a little bit older as far as his collegiate age is concerned. But what he brings to the table with ball skills is really fun to think about. If you have a guy in Christian Fulton who you think is sticky in coverage on the outside, we know what Trent McDuffie brings to the table no matter where you line him up from that standpoint, and allowing that guy to kind of be the guy to try and take the ball away. So Darian Porter is certainly on that list as far as 63 or 66 for that matter is concerned, along with those other names. But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to what they end up going with on the draft. But the important thing, and this goes for across the roster, Brett Veach has set up the Chiefs for a standpoint of this roster can go and play a game tomorrow if they had to. They just don't necessarily have any glaring weaknesses or needs as that standpoint, so they can have best player available in the draft.
Absolutely. And with that, man, I mean, Spags this year I feel like he needs to go back to his NASCAR package. He has to.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, seeing what that NASCAR package looks like, because they obviously, they got Dana, who's paid. They got Felix Anduke-Uzomah, who I think is in a prove it year 3 where you have to take a step, or, there's going to be question marks about if you're ever going to have that type of career, at least here specifically. We know Karlaftis or Jones are going to be a part of it. And of course, Omenihu who has his role within here too. So if you go into your NASCAR package and whatever that looks like with Omenihu reducing down, I think that could be great. We know how Chris Jones likes to get creative in finding his edge, kind of matchups against a tackle that he wants to choose. So the funny thing about the Chiefs NASCAR package, it could still be 2 defensive linemen out there, or 2 interior defensive linemen, 2 defensive tackles or whatever. It could just be these guys are moving around so much you don't know where they're coming from. So yeah, that's the big thing. And depending on if they add an athletic edge or athletic interior defensive lineman, if they add both, and where those guys really come at from a skill set perspective, I'm going to be really interested to see.
Absolutely, man. And speaking of the defensive line, they're in the last part of the news, which I'm very happy about too. And our guy JP, part of Chiefs Focus, he talked about it on Twitter last week before the signing happened. He said this guy should be back, and none other than Big Mike Pennell, coming back on a 1-year deal. The 6'4", 330-pound vet enhances the team's experience alongside with Chris Jones, and also is going to help out Jerry Tillery, who's newly signed. This is Pennell's 5th time with the team after debuting with the Packers in 2014. He played a key role in the Chiefs' Super Bowl victories, especially what he did to Trent Williams in Super Bowl 58, which was a beautiful thing. And Pennell was crucial as a nose tackle with Nick Bolton in the run D, which was big and important, similar to what Vince Wilfork was for the Patriots. So, that's why it was important to bring him back. And, Chris Jones remains the centerpiece, but we all both know they should expect to add another defensive tackle in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to your point, Mike Pennell, he's going to sit there. He's going to do exactly what he's here to do, be a really 2-gap and 3 tackle that complements what Chris Jones brings to the table, or complements what Jerry Tillery brings to the table as your more penetrating 3-tech. And he does a really good job at doing that on a consistent basis. And that's why we continue to bring it back. And you mentioned, obviously, Derek Nottie moving on to the Jets. It was a little bit redundant of having both of those guys, but
yeah,
Tershawn Ward moving on to the Carolina Panthers, being able to have Jerry Tillery kind of take on, at least of the rotational standpoint, what Tershawn Ward kind of brought to the table. Obviously, last year he brought even more than that to the table as far as a snap usage. and Mike Pennell being that run stuffer within the room. Again, you got 3 defensive tackles that are there, and obviously that go next to Chris Jones. They have Tuli Luke-Topu coming back as well on a non-top 51 contract. So we'll see as far as that works out. But definitely the senior tier defensive line is still at the top of the list as far as draft is concerned, and there are some pretty good guys that they can go out of there and attack.
Yeah. And to finish this up, as everybody knows, I asked Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated the question about that position, as D-Mac is alluding to. As a matter of fact, me, D-Mac, Thiz, and our guy, a friend of the show, Brad Lindenkamp, we talked about it. But in the majority, we talked about those 3 positions: offensive tackle, running back, and defensive tackle. And he answered the names of those people. And a few of those names is on this next segment list that I can't wait to talk about, especially with running backs. And I can't wait, man. But what's your quick thoughts about that before we move on?
Yeah, I think you nailed it as far as some of the targets were concerned. And certainly some of my favorite prospects are on that list. As far as our Tell the Truth, kind of trio is concerned, I have the responsibility of the running backs, offensive tackles, and defensive tackles. So definitely some guys right up my alley, and definitely a lot of guys that get me excited as far as being able to add talent at places that make a lot of sense for the Chiefs, not only in 2025, but into the future.
Absolutely, man. And that's why I can't wait to see what's going to happen in about 27 days from now. So anyway, as we move on to the next segment here, people, these are my top 4 running backs, but I'm excluding these names: Ashton Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, and I have to exclude my guy who comes from KU, Devin Neal. So, in the NFL draft, I already know you and Thiz are Mizzou guys, so whatever, man.
I know, baby.
Whatever, man. Rock chalk. Never. But anyway, we ain't gonna get into that. But anyway, like I said, I respect the Metro and everything. Whatever, Thiz. Anyway, all right. Valuable players often emerge in late rounds and among undrafted rookies. Especially at this position with the running backs. Strong running backs are crucial for a team's success. Easing pressure on the quarterbacks, like what the Chiefs should do for Mahomes, and balancing the offense. A robust run game controls the game's pace, controlling the clock and everything. With high draft picks for running backs face scrutiny, their dual threat ability can be invaluable. Pacheco, he is an impactful player where you saw that he does well running the ball, but sometimes as he's running, doing that thing, and then he does well in the passing game, as you saw in 2023. But then you saw he got hurt. And that's another part that plays into it, injuries. And, there are promising guys like the Genties of the world, the Hamptons, and, yes, my guy, Neal. And there's also Giddens from K-State, Junction City, Kansas native. Consider it like if the Chiefs look to enhance their Super Bowl chances with Mahomes, this is that position right here, man. And, Genty and Hampton are, the top-tier standouts. While Neal, local guy from where I'm here right now in Lawrence, Kansas, is also appealing for his patience and his ability to exploit those openings. And, he rushed for, 4,000 yards rushing, 49 touchdowns for the Jayhawks, averaging almost 6 yards a carry. These are those type of running backs that we definitely want for the Chiefs. But speaking of that, here are some others that I feel like can thrive in this system. And let's pull up my guy. And I know might not be a fan of this guy because I saw one of your tweets, bro. But, you open to speak your mind on this, man. I'm off using it. But here you go. Cam Skattebo, Arizona State. Cam Skattebo is a tough physical running back who sets the tone. He's powerful. He runs through defenders. He requires intensity to stop him for 4 quarters. Skattebo has excellent contact balance, gains extra yards after contact while keeping plays alive with his awareness. Beyond his downhill power, he shows good footwork, bro, like navigating the run lanes efficiently. He embodies the coach phrase, too slow, fast through. As a reliable receiver, he protects the quarterback. And he has really, really reliable in pass protection, which we didn't see from Pacheco in the Super Bowl, if you know what I mean, man. And he ranked second in receptions at Arizona State in 2024. He runs various routes similar to like we see from, Christian McCaffrey. And, though Skattebo lacks, the standout athleticism, especially the speed, he compensates with his ability to gain yards after contact. While efficient, he isn't swift and stationary defenders can limit him. Projected as a rotational running back, Scatterboo's strong work ethic and blocking skills could lead to opportunities. His athletic testing will be crucial in this draft, which some people have seen with his 4.65 speed. But, hey, those guys are faster than that, better than Darrell Williams, but nothing against Darrell. But he may be valuable in the running back committee, but I really think he has a real good chance, in my personal opinion, to be a welcoming addition to this running back room. And, bro, he reminds me a lot of Marshawn Lynch, because when I saw the tape, yes, Marshawn is faster, 4.46 40. But when you see the way he runs the ball and he turns the legs, low center of gravity, that body core strength, that's what I see in Marshawn Lynch. And that's why I call him white beast mode. And just the low center of gravity just to keep those legs moving when he has contact. And, that's the running back that the Chiefs should have on a 4-year deal. So what's your thoughts?
So, obviously, if people have seen my timeline, they know I'm not the biggest Cam Scatterbo guy. So the thing about him is I completely agree with pretty much the way that everybody sees him. Incredible contact balance, runs behind his pads extremely well, has a little bit more wiggle than you would probably give him credit for, especially within the tackle specifically. And he has good vision as well, understands when to hit the holes and specifically, how to set up blocks as well. Like you said, competent pass catcher. I wouldn't say he runs a variety of routes, but it's not like he looks lost out there when he does so. And certainly more than willing as far as pass pro. He certainly hits guys and makes sure that the quarterback is kept clean. So I agree with everything as far as that assessment is concerned. The issues that I have with him specifically as it pertains to a fit with the Chiefs is we don't necessarily run the ball in the ways that Cam Scatterbo would succeed. It's not a lot of under center where we're running the ball, getting to the gap and power and duo aspect of it. It's not necessarily what we major in as far as that's concerned. We do it a little bit, but not as much as I would even prefer. But certainly to maximize a guy like Cam would make a lot of sense. So that standpoint kind of concerns me. The other part is we really do need a running back that I feel like takes advantage of space. And I think Scatterbo does that, well, but I would not say as well as some other of his peers within this other class from that standpoint. And so his ability to, create yards after contact, I think is impressive and certainly useful. It's just the fit for the Chiefs doesn't necessarily line up for me specifically, especially when I compare him to other people in this class that I do prefer. So again, I don't want to knock the kid because, I'm not trying to say that. And it's certainly, I think that he can have a successful NFL career. I think it's just better if he goes somewhere else that would use him, in the ways that really could maximize him a little bit better than what this Chiefs offense normally shows from that standpoint.
Absolutely. I agree with that because I get what you're saying. He's more of a gap runner than he is a zone runner. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And I can see that, but that's the thing, though. The Chiefs have met with Ollie Gordon and Scatterbo, but these are guys who are more gap runners than they are zone runners. And I'm just trying to figure out, so what's the deal behind that?
Yeah. I mean, look, if it's a change from their philosophy, it'd be welcome from my standpoint as well. And Ollie Gordon, he's not necessarily my favorite either, but he's a guy, if you get him later on in day 3, I'm not going to be upset with it, especially from a pedigree standpoint, because his 2023 tape is a lot better than 2024 tape, in which I don't even know what happened to him in 2024. It was very weird from that standpoint. But no, if they want to change their philosophy up, then I can see it a little bit more. But there's also the other piece of it. If you change up your philosophy, then you probably can just keep Isaiah Pacheco as your thunder guy and then add a lightning guy and to complement a little bit more. And again, Pacheco, Hunt, and even Elijah Mitchell, who's obviously different from these guys, obviously are all on 1-year deals. So it's not necessarily that you should limit yourself to a guy that complements Pacheco, because this is, again, about the future, not just 2025. But ideally, it would be a guy that complements him more than I think Cam Scatterbo would do.
I'm with you with that. I agree. I'm with you there. So this next guy, I think this is the guy that Albert Breer mentioned, and I think he's one of your guys too, and he's actually one of my guys. But like me and Thiz have talked about, I don't know if the Chiefs could get him, but now at this point, I think it's a good chance that we could get him. Quinshon Judkins, Ohio State. Judkins is an athletic running back who has made a significant impact since moving from Ole Miss to Ohio State. He is a patient runner with excellent vision, navigating defenses for extra yards. Judkins has a compact frame, runs hard, and can switch between punishing and evasive styles, uses great stiff arm to fend off defenders, has the speed to create big plays, and a reliable pass catcher capable of lining up, in various positions. However, he needs to improve his pass protection and can be more decisive between tackles. Junkins combines size, strength, versatility, make him running back one caliber. He has the potential to excel in the passing game, providing a safety option for quarterback. To acquire a guy like Junkins, the Chiefs may need to probably risk trading up for him, especially if you're targeting an early second round pick, since he likely won't be available when it's their turn late in the second or early third. Junkins can potentially excel as a 3-down player, so you gonna have to make that move, especially get him. Bringing him on board would secure the position for the next 4 years with a top tier all around running back. And my pro comparison kind of reminds me of DeMarco Murray, especially when he was with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I'm a big fan of Judkins, and look, that pairing between Judkins and Travion Henderson was special at OSU, and that was obviously evident in the fact that they won the championship. But you talked about Judkins. He's a guy that I wouldn't necessarily look at in the first round, but that's just because of how I look at these things as far as running back. But you're talking about 63, 66. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. I have no issues as far as that's concerned. He is a guy that can take over the entirety of this running back room. He can play 3 downs, has soft hands, doesn't run a variety of routes, but runs the routes in which the Chiefs ask their running backs to do without an issue. Pass protection certainly can be a little bit of a question mark from that standpoint. I think there is a little, the want to is there. The technique needs some work, but I'll trust the Chiefs coaching staff to get that out of him. And you talk about, as far as running the ball, vision is everything that you want as far as that's concerned. Feet, you watch him in the combine and the way in which he was able to move effectively, especially in that pad hurdle drill that I really like to watch as far as how smooth is the transition. It shows up, especially shows up in his phone booth kind of work as far as being able to make guys miss within a phone booth. Runs behind his pads, good, really good contact balance as far as that's concerned. And you add that entire package that he brings as far as a physicality standpoint. He's also a plus athlete. Man ran a 4.48. You look at all of his split times, he's explosive. His vertical is broad, extremely explosive as far as that's concerned. Everything you want as far as a more power than speed running back brings to the table, but he has enough of that long speed that he can still hit those home runs when they're blocked up effectively. And so when you get back to taking advantage of the space, he's got the vision if you want to run those zone concepts that obviously the Chiefs, love to do. Obviously, if you do mix in those gap and power runs, he's more than happy to take advantage of those as well. I think he brings what you want to the table from a power perspective, and then has the athleticism that can take advantage of that speed enough to where I feel comfortable with him on day 2. Necessarily compare, and I don't want to compare all of them to Cam Scottaboo, but to compare necessarily to a power player like Cam Scottaboo as well. I just think that there's a difference in that athleticism that really helps Judkins stand out from that standpoint. And so I love him, 63, 66. I'd be happy to bring him in, and I think he could take over this running back room for sure.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you there, good sir. And speaking of somebody he shared the backfield with last season, contributing to Ohio State's title win, fans see his teammate here, shades of Jamal Charles in him. Travion Henderson, reminiscent of Jamal Charles, is a threat with speed and elusiveness. His vision helps him quickly spot opening lanes and follow blocks, showing patience and good change of direction skills to evade defenders like Jamal used to do. As an athlete, Henderson generates big plays with his burst, acceleration, needing only a small crease to exploit defenses. His footwork, tempo changes, keep defenders off balance, enhanced by, dead leg and hesitation moves. In the passing game, he's functional and not at top action, mainly running shallow routes. He's a willing pass blocker. I really noticed that he's more of a better pass blocker than Junkins, which is interesting, but needs technical improvement for better leverage though. That's the thing that Henderson needs though. After a strong freshman year, he faced health issues, which may affect his ability to be a cowbell running back. He'd excel in a rotation, ideally a change of pace runner who adds explosive plays to the offense. And his speed would intrigue the Chiefs, be a welcoming addition to this running back room. He has the ability in the passing game as both a pass catcher, pass blocker, which the Chiefs prefer and could, further develop his skill set. Henderson makes sense as an option, around pick 63 or 66, or if Veach wants to move up to get him, just a few certain spots, how he moved up to get Rashee Rice. Some people projected Rashee Rice as an early third round pick, around number 70 pick, but he got picked at number 55 in 2023. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Henderson is the type of guy in which you got to move up a little bit to go get, then I understand it. I completely get it. Not necessarily in a similar way because they only moved up one spot to get Kingsley Suamataia. But if you're talking about a trade in that similar amount where you just move up just a little bit in the second round to go grab him, I get it. He is far and away my running back 3, and I say that as Quinshon Judkins is running back 4 for me, and he's close, or I should say that I think really highly of Judkins, but he is far and away my running back 3. And specifically as it pertains to the fit for the Chiefs, he is my number 1 fit because you're talking the draft cost, which again, second round makes a lot of sense from that standpoint as far as Chiefs targets are concerned and what he brings to the table. And you did the comparison to Jamal Charles. I want to say flat out, I think the Jamal Charles stuff is a little bit excessive, only from the standpoint of Jamal Charles' acceleration is to a level that I think is so uniquely Hall of Fame level that it's almost unfair to compare anybody else to him. But
right.
If you're talking about the way in which he plays the game, I completely get it. Because you talk about what the Chiefs like to do with their running backs in Andy Reid's ideal system. They can split out wide and create mismatch versus linebackers. He can do that. He can go outside and run real wide receiver routes and really make an impact from that standpoint, a la Jamal Charles. And obviously we know what he can do out of the backfield. You talk about his pass protection, it's at top level. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best in his class. He understands when to get to these blitzers. He understands how to chip effectively, and he has the want to do so, even though he necessarily is maybe a little bit of a smaller, lighter package from that standpoint. And then that's before you get to the run the ball, which is exceptional. Vision, he brings enough contact balance and power that is really still impressive as far as his yards after contact, still one of the top in the class. He can make anybody miss in space as far as that's concerned. Again, having that explosiveness to be able to take advantage of space is going to be key for whoever we bring into the running back room. And then you talk about really the biggest aspect of what the Chiefs have missed, creating those explosive plays and those home run hitting abilities. He brings that to the table in a way that even Judkins doesn't necessarily have from that standpoint because he can pull away from guys late in the play in that standpoint. So I love what he brings to the table. He is the dream scenario for a Chiefs running back to come into this room. He is somebody that if he came into this room, it wouldn't even be a Pacheco is 1B. It would be Pacheco's just a number 2 because they would fall in love as over the course of the season, and he would just get the lion's share of the snaps because he is that level of player from that standpoint. And I think he is also a better complement to Pacheco from that standpoint because he brings all of the things to the table, as I alluded to. So if Trayvon Henderson's added to this team, and if they need to trade up a little bit in the second round to go get him, I would be ecstatic to have that happen. And I really love what his fit can be for the Chiefs. And he really is the ideal pick, as far as I'm concerned, at the running back position for this team to kind of turn the juice up in the running back room.
Absolutely. I agree with you here. I hate to say this, man, you're 2 for 4 on this one because the fourth one is one of the guys that we mentioned. Actually, I mentioned, and then you also mentioned that you didn't like either. So the running backs I chose here was based off of the fan poll and asked what the fans wanted, and majority of the fans chose these guys in particular. So, hey. So, anyway,
I think it's good to talk about not just the guys that you necessarily love with, but just guys that you've seen different. I think that's a good thing to go ahead.
Absolutely. So the last guy is none other than Ollie Gordon II from Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon II, the 2023 Doak Walker Award winner, is a powerful downhill running back, adapt in, a gap scheme, rushing offense. He finishes runs with good balance at full speed and can create problems for defenders when provided with solid blocking. He's a patient runner with good vision, generating big plays when he has room. He is also a capable receiver out of the backfield, functioning as a reliable check down option, and has solid pass protection skills as well, just like Henderson. I even checked it out on Pro Football Focus, that's probably one of the reasons why the Chiefs are also looking and talking to him, because he has that good skill set. However, his lateral movement is average. He struggles with stop and start running and lacks explosive acceleration. Gordon's effectiveness diminishes without clear running lanes, and he is a powerful runner with potential as a backup under the right conditions, a starter in a gap scheme offense. And, big backs is, the type of guys that Veach prefers. And, he fits that mold. And there are some technical issues that he needs to address, and he has the mental capacity to manage it. Gordon will likely be in the conversation if the Chiefs were to select a running back in the later rounds, with immense upside in the passing game as both a protector and a pass catcher, especially what you saw in that 2023 tape. Gordon would immediately carve out a role if he was added to this roster. And my pro comparison is James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals, who previously played with the Steelers. They both ran 4.6 40s and both 6 feet 220.
Yeah, I actually really like that comparison from the standpoint. Connor wasn't obviously highly touted necessarily coming out from Pitt. And this was, he had the other extenuating circumstances as far as his cancer diagnosis and being able to overcome that. But you talk about the way in which Ollie Gordon excels at the running back position. It's very similar to what the high end of James Conner's outcome would really, look like. Bring that power to the standpoint. Doesn't necessarily pull away from guys, not elite lateral mobility, but when you create space necessarily, when specifically we've seen it in Arizona, Pittsburgh didn't necessarily work as well because they didn't necessarily do this. But what you saw in Arizona, Kyler Murray and what his legs advantage kind of brings to the table, their passing attack and what they kind of bring to the table, then adding James Conner's power element allowed them to be one of the best run games in the National Football League, point blank period. And as far as Ollie Gordon is concerned, you're looking for that type of outcome, the ability to bring the power standpoint, run behind your pads, contact balance. He does have good vision. We've seen that on 2023 tape. He can receive the ball out of the backfield, and again, he can pass pro. So all of the running back elements are there kind of from a technical standpoint. It's just the athleticism is lacking. The long speed isn't necessarily great. The ability, again, lateral movement ability, make guys miss in phone booths isn't necessarily great. But if you can create yards after contact with the power, then it's okay. And I say it's okay from the standpoint of I like Ollie Gordon as more of a pick for the Chiefs. And again, I hate that I'm going to do this again. But compared to Cam Scatterborough, simply for the draft costs, because I think that Ollie Gordon is somebody that, due to the 2024 down year, is going to come at a significantly reduced cost than wherever Cam is going to end up going. And you're talking about into day 3 from that standpoint. So ultimately, if you wanted to take an Ollie Gordon and double up with a guy who I have some of my other day 3 sleepers as far as, guys like Brashard Smith, Taj Brooks, Jadon Blue, Damian Martinez, Brashard Tootin, those guys that are more explosive to go next.
Oh,
to
yeah.
what he brings from a powerful standpoint. Yeah.
Brooks.
Then you really can, create an element in which adding that to this running back room makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. So I understand Ollie Gordon as a target, and I'm sure that when the Chiefs had him in, they were just going to ask him flat out, what's the difference in what happened in 2024 and what happened in 2023 from your perspective, and be interested as far as his answer is concerned. But I do understand why he would be a target for the Chiefs, specifically because of his draft costs. And I think he could make sense specifically if you plan on doubling up at the position.
Absolutely, man. I'm with you there. So, man, glad we had that discussion there, man, and hope you fans understand that, man, and especially the Chiefs executives who are watching too. You're here right now. So, with that being said, with the final part and final segment of the show, let's conclude it with the top 100 pick mock with picks 31, 63, 66, and 95. And I will complete these mock drafts focusing on the top 100 picks, given the offseason moves we made so far. So what will Veach do this coming April, when April starts tomorrow? These picks represent the best player available, allowing the team to fill premium positions, especially gaps on this roster coming up. If the team targets a serious three-peat, if they want that seriously, this draft right here is crucial. It begins with this one. The Chiefs are close to a 1 week ready roster for 2025, having built a solid team, except for, adding a few more defensive tackle positions. Why is defensive tackle so important? Because we're tired of seeing Chris Jones getting doubled and triple teamed. Simple as that. Next month, starting on April 24th, Veach will be in the war room, which is the title of this show as well, too, which is where the inspiration of the title of my show came from, is the war room. Ready to select the best player available at pick 31 and beyond. While some positions may appear more urgent, they should prioritize value as they did with Jayden Hicks, for example, last season. Here are my top 100 picks for the Chiefs, focusing between 31 and 95. And these are based off of those discussions I've had with you, good sir, and this. And I used the PFF model. And here we go. With pick number 31, I selected Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. Nolan from Ole Miss would enhance the Chiefs' defensive line with his size, his strength, movement skills for the NFL. He excels against the run, using powerful hands to gain leverage and resist double teams. His main limitation is shedding blocks, but has a decent hump move to escape. As a pass rusher, his bull rush collapses the pocket. He creates pressure through the lines, games, and stunts, and aided by his quickness. The lateral movement, his versatility skill set suggests that he could be a starter within 2 years with all Pro Bowl upside. He could play in the 3 technique role in even fronts, 4 technique and odd fronts. And there are parallels to me that reminds me of another former Joe Cullen defensive lineman, Nnamdi Medebuke, who shares a similar size, especially same ability coming out of Texas A&M in 2020, which was the last year Joe Cullen was with the Baltimore Ravens. And speaking of Joe Cullen is, to me, the best defensive line coach in the National Football League. And Nolan's exceptional pass rushing aligns perfectly with Joe Cullen's reputation for developing talented defensive linemen like Medebuke. So, just in case that we didn't get Nolan, there's Alabama's left guard Tyler Booker, if we want to talk about best player available move. Yeah, that's right. Your dog calling. Yeah. So there's Tyler Booker from Alabama, best left guard in this draft, if you want to replace Tooney. There's also James Pierce, the speedy pass rusher from Tennessee, or the slot threat from Mizzou, Luther Burton III, the sleeper pick, if he's there at 31, Omarion Hampton, or a trade-up scenario. Michigan's Kenneth Grant, who was mentioned in an article by Albert Breer, is a strong defensive tackle with quickness and power. He's effective run defender, shows great effort in pursuit. He could be targeted between number 17 through 20. His size, if he was on the Chiefs, would allows him to bull rush and shed blocks, adding depth on third down for players like Chris Jones, Carl Loftus, and Omenihu. He would open up this pass rush. So what's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so as far as Walter Nolan is concerned, he's a guy that I personally have as D2 defensive tackle 2 in this class. I love what he brings to the table. He's comfortable playing, in a 2-gap system. If you ask him to do that, he's fine with eating up blocks from that standpoint, which will work next to the gap penetrators that obviously Chris Jones certainly is, or Jerry Tillery from that standpoint. Also, he can be really disruptive, specifically in the power that he really plays with. And this is why he really reminds me. I know you did the Medebuke comp, which makes sense, but he reminds me a lot of Jonathan Allen, obviously, of the Commanders, and the way that he plays with that power. His bull rush is extremely effective, heavy hands. He understands how to move guys out of the way. And he has enough wiggle really to try and shed those blocks if necessary. But the level of power that he plays with is not always necessary from that standpoint. So I really like what he brings to the table. And again, more of that 3 tech than a guy like Kenneth Grant, even though I do like what Kenneth Grant brings to the table, specifically against the run. I'm looking for a guy that can be especially when you talk about 31, a guy that can be a long-term starter here, a guy that can take over for what Chris Jones continues to bring. And there's a level of effectiveness and disruptive within the middle and his upside that he can kind of bring to the table and really develop into. So I love what Walter Nolan brings to the table. He's there at 31. I'm going to be extremely excited to add him from that standpoint. You mentioned obviously some other guys. I think Luther Burton can certainly be a fit as far as his wide receiver room and the explosiveness that he brings to the table. Some people would be like, the fit in the slot. I think that he was limited by what Mizzou kind of brought to the table as far as offense, and of course Brady Cook from that standpoint. I think that he can be a guy that can play outside or inside and use effectively really more of a Z flanker than necessarily a strict slot from that standpoint. And he brings all the yard after catch ability that you could want in the world as far as Andy Reid is concerned. You mentioned Omarion Hampton. I think Omarion Hampton is a great running back. I truly do think he's a great running back prospect. I'm not doing the first round running back thing again. It's not specifically. It's just not my thing. I'm not going to take a running back at the first. It's just not my thing. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't do it either. Yeah.
It's just not my thing. You mentioned obviously Kenneth Grant. I do like Kenneth Grant from that standpoint. If he's there at 31, I certainly understand it. He would be behind Derek Harmon as far as Oregon is concerned, as far as defense tackle. And the last guy, James Pierce Jr., a guy out of Tennessee that is a departure necessarily from what Spags likes from his edges. But he is a guy that if you brought him in, he would be immediately a designated pass rusher that you could use on third down and inject a lot of juice as far as the pass rush is concerned. And the important part is he's not just functionally a designated pass rusher as far as his future is concerned. I think that he can add to his frame. He has longer arms. He brings to the table a nice skill set as far as edge rusher is concerned. And I think that you saw FAU is maybe on the lowest end as far as what Steve Spagnuolo wants from his edges. I think that James Pierce Jr. can add to his frame enough to get to where FAU is kind of at as far as strength is concerned, and then ultimately be a 3-down impactful edge rusher as far as that's concerned. So I think James Pierce Jr., if they want to slightly bend their edge rules, would make a lot of sense. And even though people were like, well, you're only drafting this guy to be a defensive pass rusher immediately. Yes, but A, the future upside is there, and B, if he's going to get you off the field on 3 to 4, third downs as far as the playoffs is concerned, that's more than enough 2025 value for me to justify the pick.
Absolutely, man. And that's right, man. That's my comparison right there, Walter Nolan. And he's one of those guys everybody should look out for. And moving along. So, speaking of pass rusher, I had to stack up on pass rushing this with these first 100 picks, man. So, second one I got with pick number 63, Kyle Kennard, defensive end from South Carolina. I previously had him on my last mock draft, and I'm sticking with him. The Nagurski Trophy winner and the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Kennard led the SEC with 11.5 sacks and has a strong initial step, effective rip and dip moves, and good speed around the edge. However, he must enhance his hand usage and add size to, better handle NFL offensive linemen. But, Kennard has already gained 16 pounds since last season when he was at Georgia Tech, but it's uncertain how much more he could effectively add. He can serve as a situational pass rusher, has the potential to improve his run defense as he's gotten better. And, he could play the role that we were expecting Josh Uche to play. And I think he could do that if he came here. He reminds me of a lot of Max Crosby, who excels as a pass rusher and, dominant as a run stopper now. I didn't think that his run stopping skills was that big, but he got better. And now when you look at his Pro Football Focus grades, he's one of the best in the league. And Kennard fits the preference of those type of players with a powerful pass rushing ability and, good, run defense. Before selecting Kennard on this one, so here's another option at 63. Before selecting him, I saw Junkins get picked at 62.
Mm-hmm.
So we view this as 2 picks to move up for him, if that was an option. A safer option, if we want to stay at 63, get KC Mo native, offensive tackle, Ariane Irsay from Minnesota as a backup swing who could start midseason if needed. There's South Carolina's linebacker, Demetrius Knight, one of the oldest prospects in this class, is mature with solid tackling and good coverage skills. Probably what we're looking for as that fourth linebacker and why everybody was asking for Willie Gay to come back. Despite being overly aggressive in run defense, a sleeper pick could be Junkins' teammate, Henderson, or Texas nose tackle, Alfred Collins.
Yeah, so I'll start with Kyle Kennard as far as that's concerned. So Kennard is somebody that was extremely annoying to play against as far as South Carolina is concerned. Obviously, Mizzou fan, we do see these guys as far as SEC is concerned. So I have a little bit more experience having to go up against some of these guys from that standpoint. So I thought he was annoying. And to your point, he is a little bit undersized, and it'd be kind of weird to be like, oh, well, he's a good run defender. He is a good run defender, legitimately. He understands how to play the run on a consistent basis. Pass rush can leave a little bit to be desired. I would have liked to seen this explosive athletic testing. We don't know what that exactly looks like as far as broad and vert kind of looks like. He looked smooth as far as his actual drills were concerned. So I was like, all right, I can get with it. He's not necessarily the guy that I would target as far as edges at 63. There are other guys I like a little bit more. A guy like Brady Swinson from LSU, who plays a little bit more like a Spags, plays with a lot of pop in his hands too.
Yeah,
that I really like to watch too. Yeah, like he's very fun to watch. Jordan Birch, a guy out of Oregon who played up and down that defensive line, has a chance to really has a chance to reduce down if you so want to. As you get through it, you got to work a little bit with him on his pass rush plan as far as inside is concerned. But he was really, really good at rushing from the edge, and so I like what he can bring to the table too. So those are kind of two guys that I like maybe a little bit more. But from the standpoint of this, I understand why you would kind of target a guy as far as Kyle Kennard is concerned. Obviously, you mentioned the running backs. We talked about them before. Judkins or Henderson. I love either one of these guys here. Henderson more than Judkins, but I'm perfectly fine with either one that you come away with. And then who was the other guy that you mentioned? I'm sorry. Out of my head.
It was
Ursary.
Yep.
Ariante Ursary. So Ursary is somebody that was kind of rumored, is he a 31 option for the Chiefs, early on, as the Chiefs didn't really have a left tackle option. As you get further into it, I think that he makes sense in this range. And it would be like, you've committed to Jalen Moore, you're paying Jawan Taylor all this money. Why would you draft another tackle? Again, if you think that Jawan Taylor is going to ultimately be a guy that you want to move off of in 2026, it makes sense to go get an Ariante Ursary, who I think can be a starter at right or left tackle. You just have to, put him there, develop him, and allow him to continue to play that moving forward as far as that's concerned. But you talk about the profile that he brings to the table: athletic, experience in pass protection, long arms that the Chiefs are looking for from the tackle aspect. I think that he can make sense as a pick here. And if he falls, I think certainly they can target him and add him to this room. And again, you can allow him to compete with Jalen Moore for week one. I don't know if he's necessarily going to win that battle, but you can allow him to compete. And then ultimately, like you said, keep him as a swing and then have him take over for Moore or Taylor, whichever one you feel, you want to have him move on to. I think he can earn his way into that spot, certainly in a 2026 role.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. And with that, to add more depth to the defensive line room, I went ahead with number 66 and added CJ West, nose tackle from Indiana. I drafted Nolan, 3-tech pass rusher like Jones, and I added CJ, who has impressive athleticism. An athleticism score from Next Gen Stats of 86, clocked at below 5 40-yard dash, 4.95 second 40 time. I think he's faster than Chris Jones for a guy his size. Started 35 games at Kent State, recorded 110 tackles, 19 and a half tackles for losses. At 6'2", 317, he has shown flashes of brilliance against top competition, but needs improvement, particularly noted in his game against Georgia. West excels in a single gap front, demonstrating natural leverage and a strong performance like he did in the opener against UCF. Though he has some limitations, his pass rush potential makes him a valuable asset for a rotational role. He reminds me a lot of the Packers nose tackle Kenny Clark, and Daniel Jeremiah said that right after you saw his measurables after the combine, and I actually agree with him. He has the versatility to thrive in any defensive system. He fits the type of defensive tackle the Chiefs like, showcases the skills that align with Spagnuolo's defensive strategies. There's other options at 66, Ursary or Kennard are still options at 63 if they're still there, because I did like a redraft, like if I went with other positions, and Kennard is still there on the board at 66. There's also Henderson, our guy. There's also Knight. There's also Alfred Collins from Texas, there for value. And if we do skip on Luther Burton, there's another sleeper receiver. There's Ole Miss's Trey Harris, who projects as a promising wide receiver 3 for a deep ball offense. His route running and separation needs to improve, but he adds value with his ability to stretch the field.
Yeah. So CJ West is a guy that I'm a little bit lower on than maybe where people expect him to go as far as a second round, early third round type of grade is concerned. I have him a little bit. I have early day 3 from that standpoint. He plays with a lot of power, is able to control gaps, and really, I think some of his work against reach blocks is really impressive as well. he is somebody that I wouldn't necessarily want to have that level of draft cost go into, just for the standpoint of, again, what I'm looking for to add to this Chiefs interior defensive line room. I think that you have the opportunity to get, again, more of a disruptor, whether it's a Walter Nolan and Derek Hartman earlier, or if you want to take one of those disruptors, guys like, Omar Norman-Lott, TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander within the day 2 standpoint, or if you still want to get that run defense with a little bit more pass rush juice upside, a guy like Tyreek Williams if he continues to slide down the board, or a guy like Joshua Farmer for FSU that I really like too.
I like Farmer, man.
Yeah. And so from that standpoint, I have West probably a little bit higher, or I should say lower than other people would look at him, specifically for the fit for the Chiefs. But I understand from the standpoint of what he brings to the table. I like it from that aspect, and the power that he does bring in being able to stop the run is impressive as well. You mentioned obviously the previous running backs that we had as well, Ursary, as far as that's concerned. Trey Harris. Trey Harris is a guy that I love from this standpoint. He understands how to play outside wide receiver. The refinement does need work. Certainly won't take that away. And again, you can work on it from that standpoint. But you talk about a guy that is comfortable playing at the X position. He was on a consistent basis. And you look at what kind of the Ole Miss offense asks their guys to do. Sometimes it can be a little bit limiting. But ultimately, if you watch him on a consistent basis, you're impressed by it. He doesn't have the blazing speed. Guess what? You got Xavier Worthy. You don't necessarily need the blazing speed. You need a guy that could be on the backside of a lot of these route concepts, especially when we go the 3x1 sets, and be able to beat man-to-man coverage. That's something that he did on a consistent basis at Ole Miss. I like what he brings to the table because route distribution is really good. Again, running not just the comebacks or the vertical stem routes. He can give you with those digs. He can run those runaway routes as well. I like what Trey Harris brings to the table. So he is probably my favorite wide receiver target as far as the second round is concerned.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm with you with the value there. And that's why I saw Matt Miller's when he got Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia in his mock. I would like that idea too. I'm cool. It's like whatever you feel like is more valuable, I'm with it. So, whatever you're comfortable with. So,
yeah, if you get Stackhouse kind of in a day 3 pick, or a Deion Walker in a day 3 pick, or a Ty Robinson from that standpoint, absolutely go and do that a little bit
Ty
more.
Robinson, yeah.
A guy like CJ West, or again, if you want to stick with the more run stuffing, or I should say run defense aspect of it, then go get a Tyreek Williams or an Alfred Collins on day 2 necessarily. Then I prefer CJ Russ from that standpoint because I think they have a little bit more upside as far as getting after the passer.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, with pick 95, I went ahead and finally added this guy as part of the 3rd round running back tradition. First, it was Jamal Charles. Then it was Kareem Hunt. And now I have to add this guy. And I'm sorry, Diz, and I'm sorry, D-Mac, but I have to do it. Hail to the alma mater. Hail to OKU. Lawrence, Kansas own Devin Neal gets drafted to stay here to become the future running back 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he showcases the versatility as a runner. And my bad, I just had to do that to y'all, man. But anyway, he has the versatility as a runner with excellent contact balance and power for a guy his size. He performs effectively in short yardage scenarios and excels in both gap and this is where he's better than Scatterboo at in the zone schemes. He actually has more zone plays than Scatterboo. And while his speed is moderate, he ran a 4.58. He benefits from, tight end support on outside runs, but in the passing game, he serves as a check down option, displays the strong pass protection skills as well. Another good pass protector. His ball security and adaptability make him a compelling NFL prospect. As a matter of fact, to me, he reminds me of Shady McCoy. And I know some fans are going to, get all crazy because of, how the way he carried the ball. But look, it's the way he plays the game. But yes, let's just say he has better ball security than Shady McCoy. That's a nicer way for me to say it because I know a few people who know Shady McCoy who are watching this as well too. I'm not going to go that far, okay? But he reminds me of Shady McCoy, especially if he had, better ball security and, carried the rock more better. And Neal could replace Samaje Perine or Jerick McKinnon for the Chiefs, bringing that dynamic ability in the open field, as you guys saw at Arrowhead against Colorado. a pairing with Hunt and Neal would significantly enhance the running back room, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, so and Devin Neal is somebody that a lot of people have talked about, obviously, as Kansas connection. Makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. I like Devin Neal. I like Devin Neal more so as a 133 pick than a 95 pick, though I understand if you have to get him at 95. Vision, really good. Good lateral agility, ability to tote the rock, certainly there. Want to, as far as pass protection does show up on tape. Certainly can catch the ball, soft hands, can run a little bit of routes, not necessarily to the Travion Henderson split out level, but certainly to a competent level to be a factor in the passing game as well. The thing about him is he's only a good athlete, not necessarily a great athlete, and Devin Neal doesn't necessarily have to be a great athlete to be a really good running back in the league. We've seen other places, be able to get a lot of work out of those guys as far as a guy like Bucky Irvin or a guy like Kyrie Williams with the Rams. It's just necessarily the way in which the Chiefs run their offense. I think that you need a little bit more athleticism necessarily for me to feel great about a day two cross and spending it on the running back from that aspect. But Devin Neal, if he's a guy that you can get at 133 and bring him into this room, I will be very happy to have him here. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs, and I wouldn't have any complaints from that aspect.
Yeah. So I forgot to mention the other options at 95. I like Anthony Belton from North Carolina State for his value and his movement skills for a guy his size. There's Ohio State's Lathan Ransom, who would be nicely complementary to Cooks and Hicks. If not Neal, there's, DJ Giddens, who's another option. He has good vision and patience and the ability to find space, but needs to play more aggressively to excel in a rotation. A best player available sleeper pick would be, in my opinion, Bowling Green's tight end Harold Fannin. Strong receiver who could produce after the catch. His blocking is solid enough for tight end 2 duties. Or let's just say you pair him with him and Gray and Kelsey. That would be an absolutely great trio right there. And there you go. You have your guy who could potentially replace Kelsey to complement Gray for the future.
Yeah, so as far as the other options are concerned, Anthony Belton, I think you mentioned, obviously, as far as the NC State is concerned, I'd actually prefer a different Kansas guy. I think Logan Brown's a little bit higher than that for me than Anthony Belton. I also like Charles Grant, I should say, from William & Mary, a smaller school guy, but a guy that
I like Charles too.
Yeah, he's going to go earlier than people will expect. So I like both of those guys over Belton, but I definitely see it and why people like him as far as the movement skills and ability are concerned. You talk about Harold Fannin Jr. He's a guy that I'm definitely lower on than a lot of other people. Reason being, he's a little bit, he's undersized and he doesn't run really technical routes. His ability to get vertical is good, but I wouldn't say it's great. He's not going to give you a lot as far as the blocking game is concerned. I don't think necessarily it's a great fit for what the Chiefs would add to the tight end room. There are guys like Terrence Ferguson Jr., or Mason Taylor will be way before 95 as far as that's concerned, or a guy like Gunnar Helm that I definitely like a little bit, or I should say a lot more really than Harold Fannin Jr., certainly from that standpoint. But tight end makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Ransom. I like him as a player. I really think that he's a day 2 pick. Issue is I don't think necessarily he's what I would be spending a day 2 safety on to add to this room, because I think whoever you spend on needs to really have that free safety ability. I think that he can play it, but not necessarily as exceptionally well as a guy like Andrew Makuba from Texas, who I like a lot as far as the safety pick is concerned. So that's kind of how I look at it from that aspect. But obviously, and you mentioned obviously DJ Giddens. I think Giddens, it may be a little pricey for DJ Giddens, but I think I would understand it. I would have Neal over Giddens personally. The two guys that I'll say from a running back position at 95, RJ Harvey, who you hear a lot as far as UCF is concerned, he created a lot of explosive plays with not a lot of help as far as his offensive line is concerned. Brings to the table what you want as far as a running back. I really like him from that standpoint. And then the other guy who I'm probably a lot higher on than other people is Jordan James. Played with Oregon. In that space kind of offense, but really good athleticism, really good vision, knows how to tote the rock, can receive at a really good level as well. I like what Jordan James brings to the table, and if they pick him at 95, I'd be very happy about it. Ultimately, it seems like his value is going to be a lot lower than that. So if you get him on day 3, I'm going to be excited to add him.
Man, I know. The moment that they draft him, man, I know you're gonna be excited, man. I'll be like,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So to finish off this show, I was gonna mention the other ideas beyond that. So, ideas regarding, the later rounds. You mentioned my guy Logan Brown. He's a candidate, a guy who allowed only 7 pressures last season. That's something that the Chiefs have interest in him. There's also Chase Lunt from UConn, 6'8", 305, has great potential but needs to get stronger. There's a pick 257. I feel like personally, Shiloh Sanders could be that pick, could be a surprise pick, or could go undrafted. He could play a dual role as a slot defender and single high safety. He could definitely be that type of guy. I mean, we saw his liability at Arrowhead last year, but before that game, just look at his previous tape. He has great stats as a single high guy and even as a slot guy. And last but not least, this is my favorite late round pick, and I pray to God the Chiefs get this guy. Georgia's Dylan Fairchild, a left guard who hasn't allowed a sack and earned 2 All-Americans honors since 2023 from Georgia. He could provide excellent value on day 3, and he is a great fit for the Chiefs offensive line. That's all I got to say on that part. What you think, man?
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned the Shiloh Sanders, and I feel bad from this standpoint. Shiloh Sanders is not necessarily a guy that I feel like can play in the NFL. He doesn't have the athleticism to do so, and he misses far too many tackles for me to be willing to get him, because you can't put him on special teams if you're going to miss too many tackles. So he's not my favorite pick. But again, you're talking about 257. At that point, doesn't necessarily matter. At that point, they're just primary UDFAs. But you mentioned, obviously, oh my God, he just jumped out of my head. Fairchild from Georgia. I do like the idea. If you do feel like, again, you've invested a lot into your offensive line, Kingsley Suamati has come over. But if he gets to the 7th round and that guy's hanging around, a guy with a 2-time All-American on a really competitive team, I completely get why you would add him to the interior offensive line. Me personally, I'm not touching interior offensive line within the top 100. It's too many assets to throw into that room when you've already thrown a lot at it from that standpoint. So if there's a guy that you get to the 7th round, you want to throw one of the 250 picks at it, I completely understand it from that standpoint as well.
Absolutely.
I will leave you with this as far as some of the guys down the board, and you talk about really into day 3, and there's a bunch of guys as far as who you can end up picking, but 2 guys that are a little bit under the radar. One guy, Marcus Yarns, and you saw him at Delaware work at the combine.
Yeah, bro.
You talk about a guy, and we obviously mentioned Ollie Gordon earlier. If you take a guy that is a powerful type of running back early on, and you want to get more of that third down ability to bring into it, a Jet McKinnon or some RJP Ryan, Marcus Yarns can satisfy that from that standpoint. I think it would make a lot of sense as a late round pick as far as that's concerned. I like what he brings to the table as well. The other guys on the defensive side of the ball, and we talk about obviously defensive tackle being a place that you want to add some depth as far as that's concerned. Elijah Williams out of Morgan State, HBCU guy that really showed out as far as the HBCU combine is concerned. He was the HBCU player of the year. I love what he brought to the table as far as Elijah Williams. He went to the bowl and during All-Star season and really showed out, really versus some tough competition as far as interior offensive line. Good athlete. I like what he brings to the table. You want to bring him late. He's a guy that's kind of off the board as well. I like that idea to go ahead and bring him in to Kansas City.
Absolutely, man. That is absolutely right on the money. Well, everybody, first off, I wanted to say, D-Mac, man, thank you so much, good sir, for coming, having this conversation, man. P-Mac meets D-Mac, man. Do you have any final thoughts before we close?
No, man, it was really good to come on and have this conversation with you. Talk about a lot of these prospects, man. I'm extremely excited. You talk about obviously the idea of team building. This is where I really enjoy talking about the possibilities of where you can go as far as the draft or offseason in general is concerned. I'm excited what Brett Veach has done to this point, and excited to see what he brings to the table as far as offseason is concerned. Please do check us out as far as Kingdom Cast is concerned. Obviously, Tell the Truth is the show that I do with CJ and DG. We're live every single Tuesday night over there on Kingdom Cast. You can find us on YouTube. We're going to be on Spotify as well the day after. You can find us on Twitter as well. You can follow us there. And, of course, follow me, DMacWake316 on Twitter. I'm posting mock drafts all throughout the month of April, and I have a few already up there. I'm always talking Chiefs football, so happy to talk with anybody that wants to.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. Like you heard the man. Check out Tell the Truth on the Kingdom Cast channel. And everybody, thank you. And just want to say that's it. And go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
Deuces.
Peace out, man.